Hi, and welcome to the second presentation on the Unification of Germany. These are notes 11.3b, and this is, of course, Mr. Marx. This presentation is going to show you just how crafty Bismarck got when trying to unify Germany. Like I said in the last presentation, he's looking at realpolitik, this idea that whatever you do is okay as long as it increases your power. You don't want to lie all the time because no one will trust you, but if you do it at key moments, it can turn the balance of power into your favor. And in 1866, he uses exactly this technique in order to gain two areas of land for the German, for the Prussian kingdom, which he was in charge of, but in order to unite a new Germany. If you remember from the last presentation, there had been two previous attempts to consolidate Germany into a single place. The two groups that had done this were the French and the Austrians. Now, the Austrians are also a German-speaking people, and they often will side with Prussia at different times in negotiations just as a kind of brotherhood between them. Well, Bismarck used this to his advantage when he saw that there were lands that Denmark had claimed, which he said were actually part of Germany. There were German-speaking people who were there. And off the smallest offense, he manages to convince Austria to join Prussia in war against Denmark. Now, I know that this slide says the Austro-Prussian War, and I've already said Austria and Prussia are in here, but that isn't the war yet. You see, he was also looking at the lands that Austria had taken earlier in order to make their own unified German confederation. So, already knowing that he was going to betray them, he sends these Austrians to the front lines of this battle with Denmark. As the battle is pretty easily won if you have both Prussia and Austria riding together. They're able to take out Denmark, but the Austrians bear the brunt of the casualties. And almost immediately after the war is over, rather than giving some of the territories which he had promised to Austria, Bismarck turns around and attacks Austria. He declares war on them, and with their weakened army and their army in the wrong spot at that time, he's able to take them over so quickly that the Austro-Prussian War is often also referred to as the 7 Weeks' War. Now that he's got that done, he has the territories from Denmark, has the territories from Austria. All he's got to deal with are the territories that France is holding. So he comes up with another bit of a plan. In 1870, one of the King of Spain had died, and one of the crown princes in Germany was next up for the throne. Now, people were really getting concerned about Prussia's influence on the world, and they didn't want to see Prussia gain influence over the entirety of the nation of Spain. France, in particular, who, with Austria having recently been defeated, was the next most powerful group to really challenge Prussia. And so they send out a pretty strongly worded missive that requests that not only does that prince not try to become king of Spain, but that no German will ever attempt to become king of Spain. Now, to make sure that this message is delivered properly, the French end up sending an ambassador to talk to Wilhelm I, and they have a pretty private and rather civil conversation about this while they're in a garden walking around. The French minister does mention that they're serious enough about this that they were willing to go to war for it. And Wilhelm is pretty straightforward in mentioning how he understands, their position, and he isn't looking to enter into a war. Well, Wilhelm doesn't feel all that good about this meeting afterwards, and he has a secretary of his type up all the notes. These are what become known as the Ems dispatch, EMS, the Ems dispatch. And this person then gives this copy of the notes to Otto von Bismarck. Now Bismarck sees this as a massive opportunity. He can't just attack the French outright, because after he's already done that to Denmark and then done it to Austria, he rightly considered that the other countries of the world might unite against him the same way they had united against Napoleon, a couple generations earlier. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, he has to figure out a way to make it so the French declare war on him. Now he gets Wilhelm's permission to make this conversation public, but he goes through and he edits exactly what was said. Now he doesn't make any lies. He doesn't change any of the words. What he does is he cuts out words which would have otherwise made it seem to be the more reasonable conversation it actually was. Now it sounds like the French. This new M's dispatch makes it sound like the French ambassador is insulting the King of Germany, and that in response the King of Prussia, and in response Wilhelm is insulting the French people. All of the nice language that they were actually using in the garden has been taken out. So Bismarck publishes this, and he also makes a hint that the Germans are going to go ahead and put their prince on the throne of Spain, even though that wasn't his intention at all. Fearing that that's what Prussia was going to do, take control of Spain, and had made all these insults to the French people. I mean, here was the King of Prussia saying these awful things about him. The French people demanded that they go to war against Prussia, which played exactly into Bismarck's hands. He had already had his troops set up, and the moment that the French voted on war, he attacked them and was able to end the war again really quickly. So much so that 1 year later, on January 18th of 1871, in the Palace of Versailles, remember that gorgeous palace that had been built by Louis XIV. Louis XVI had his last stand there during the French Revolution. The gorgeous palace, but it was French. Here, this is where they decide to crown Wilhelm I, the first German emperor. And we'll talk a little bit more about the empire and some of the titles next presentation. But as review, how did the conflicts of Prussia show Bismarck's policy of realpolitik? Okay? And what were the results of each of those wars, the Austro-Prussian Wars and the Franco-Prussian Wars?